you're responsible for different things. I think we hold like world leaders to just impossible and strange standards. Like we expect them to preserve order on one hand and promote freedom on the other. I mean, those two things are not the same thing.
Yeah.
Order is everyone agreeing to give up certain freedoms in order to, function in a certain way. Freedom is license. It's doing whatever you want. And, I'm going to jump out the window. I don't care. So they're just these words that sort of have a kind of a, everybody feels they know what they mean, but they don't really stop and think about what they mean. You give up freedom for order. You give up a lot to be in a society. You have to. For us to share this space, there are all sorts of rules that we have unconsciously just assumed we are willing to go along with because we're sharing this room right now. I can't just do anything I want here. You're here, so I have to take you into account. I can't just start screaming or breaking things.
Yeah. But is that something you want to do?
No, it isn't something I want to do. But
so do you feel... Because I think sometimes when we frame freedom as whatever doing whatever you want to do, then freedom is something that my freedom is limited by your existence, and I think that's how America functions. That's why people want to live in the suburbs and far away from each other, so they have more freedom, more space.
Right.
But I think that's also like a certain way of thinking about freedom that can be really problematic in a world with a lot of people.
I think it is, Well, yeah.
I don't know. There was a word I had that I liked to use more than freedom, but I've forgotten it. Because doesn't freedom also just mean isolation and loneliness?
It can, yeah. Absolute freedom is a terrible thing. I wouldn't want that. You are freest when you know your boundaries and you're comfortable with them. And then you can move around without thinking. Without boundaries, there's just there's no limits. It's scary.
You kind of lose your mind.
It's really frightening. Yeah. So there have to be some. So it's just arguing over where those boundaries are.
Right.
Some people are really comfortable with very strict boundaries.
Yes.
I think like super religious people or people like that are just, they really like knowing, okay, this is what I can do, this is what I can't do, this is what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
Great. Someone told me everything that I need, and now I can just function without thinking.
Right.
Others of us who maybe think a little more are a little less comfortable with that. I want to be able to why? Tell me why. Why can't I do this? Well, I don't necessarily want to, but why can't I do it? So, yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Are we getting anywhere with this?
I don't know. I'm also very divergent. I'm bad at honing in.
I think you're the perfect conversation partner for me because I just start going off and then it's I'm over there and this is fascinating and I don't know what we talked about by the end. I'm not sure.
Well, this show is a lot about immigration and immigrant stories.
It tends to be, yeah. The purpose of the show is to do two things. Provide information that's useful to immigrant people and provide information that's useful to people that don't know anything about immigrant people.
Okay.
So one is to humanize immigrants and immigration and why people are the way they are, and the other is to help you with your struggle as an immigrant person.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of open-ended in a lot of ways. And I find that the best conversations are the ones I don't try to guide, really, because then they're just genuine conversations. And somewhere in there will be something
useful
of use.
Perhaps.
Yeah. And we're different degrees of immigrant. I'm second generation immigrant. You first or second?
First.
You first?
Yeah.
So we both have a slightly different take on this experience, but whatever is relevant to us in our lives, we're immigrants.
Yes.
in some sense or another,
Yeah.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that right there is useful because so many people look at immigration as this
Yeah.
something that's happening over there.
Yeah.
And I don't want it happening here because I don't know who those people are. And I'm
Yeah.
not, you know.
Yeah. Because again, it's back to relationships. Like we close people off. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we so afraid of each other? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I guess there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, you could be afraid of me because you don't know me. So
Mhm.
you don't know, maybe I'm crazy. I'm going to do something out of nowhere.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm a vampire. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know you. You might take the things I say and use them against me somehow.
Right. Yeah. I just heard that the U.S. Is saying that like half of the states in the U.S. are denying admission to Syrian refugees.
Well, they're trying to.
They're trying to.
They can't because the federal government sets immigration policy. So if they say these people are okay here, states don't have anything. It's a posture.
Yeah, but then think they go to those states, everybody hates them.
Like everybody hates them everywhere.
Yeah.
Because they're different. I've been reading some interesting things. I can't resist commenting on stuff like this, particularly on like Facebook.
Yeah.
And someone was saying, well, I know these people need help, but we can't save the world. We don't have the resources to take care of everybody in the world. And so I was like, okay, well, first of all, we use so much more of the Earth's resources than anybody else in the world does several times over. Second, we have tons of resources here that are, because of the capitalist system, are locked up with, people own it. There are empty houses all over the place. There are people without homes all over the place.
Right.
Why? Because, it's my money making. You can't use my home because it's mine. It belongs to me, this personal property. So, on one hand, there's A, we could help almost everybody, and B, we could help everybody by just not using as many resources as we do, freeing them up for the rest of the world.
Right.
And finally, no one said we need to take care of everyone in the world. That's not even the question.
Yeah.
So I was like, there's so much wrong with just this one little sentence here,
It's why are we not responsible for each other as human beings?
That's a good question.
Why would, who gives us the right to deny responsibility to other human beings? In what sense in what world do you live that we're separate? I mean, it becomes more and more clear that everything I do here, the fact that I exist here has influence and consequences halfway around the world. Mm-hmm. And how is it okay to deny responsibility to other living beings? I mean,
I don't know that it is okay.
Yeah. So and then when people say we can't save the world, okay, first of all, who's we?
Yeah, who's we?
And second of all, it's always true that the people with the least give the most.
Yeah.
So when you really have nothing to give, you will know.
That's right.
You will know when you give it.
It won't be a question.
Right. I mean, it's just so sad.
It's fear again. It goes back to fear.
Yeah.
They're afraid that they'll have to give up something for this.
Yes, right.
We're afraid that the Syrian refugees will be terrorists. Why, I don't know, but that's because they're from over there and they're those people, and we're afraid that it will require some new tax, and I pay so much taxes, I can't pay any more taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have to give up ballet or Netflix or whatever. If I pay one more cent in taxes, no more cheeseburgers on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm.
I have to go back to regular hamburgers with no cheese.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's like, it really comes down to real spiritual kind of a situation, which is, if we are identified with all of these peripheral things that make us who we are, and that's who we are, then of course we don't want to give them up. It would feel like we're going to die. Right. But if we've inquired into ourselves enough where we understand that I'm not this scarf that I have, or not even the place that I live, and I'm not all these things that I want to hold on to, that I will survive given a wide range of circumstances and situations, then I'm much more willing to share because my isness is not dependent on my status or the things that I own.
But it is around here. Well, see, okay, so this raises an interesting question. We're both, here we are, 2 generations of immigrants to this country, and yet we're both sitting here pretty much trashing the basic ideology of this country in many ways. So why are we here? Why are we here if we don't approve of this way of being that is so prevalent in this
I didn't choose to be here, but... And this is really like a personal thing. Why am I an immigrant? Is because, it's the lesser evil. So, living in Iran, my parents were not okay with the fact that as a female I would always have to be embodied a certain way, that I would be limited in education, perhaps resources, that for example, I come from a very artistic family, and that music and dance were basically forbidden in an Islamic republic. So that's the greater evil for them. And so they left everything they knew and had. They gave up everything to in the hopes that there would be some concession, something for their children that was worth more to them. But that's not to say that it was an easy choice or that it was definitely for the better. I mean, it means for me that, first of all, for them, that they've never owned property since they left. They will always be migrants no matter what. I mean, they have no grounding. And I also have a deep psychology of not belonging. So it's not like we really hit it big. I mean, this is a dilemma. The existence is a dilemma. Existence is a dilemma. Why are you here?
I'm not the same reason, but similar reason. It's a long story, but basically it was my father came here way back, probably right around World War II, and it was just extreme poverty, like just a horrible existence, subsistence existence, and it was the American dream. It was like, well, over there's education, there's stability, there's security, there's all these different things. I want my children, same kind of thing, to have all these things that I couldn't. There was just no possible way I could have growing up. They didn't exist, And so, like you, even though I'm second generation, I've lived here all my life since I was born. I don't feel like I belong here. It's home in the sense that it's familiar. I know my way around. I know how to navigate all these different spaces, but it doesn't feel like mine. I don't feel any roots here, any sense of like greater connection to anything. I don't have a home. So that's exactly the weird kind of thing that I don't know how many generations you have to go through before that disappears. But you would think, well, you're born here, then you would naturally, this would be your home. But it isn't. It is only in the sense that I live here and it's familiar, but not in any deeper sense. There's a yearning for the soil. I don't know if I can describe it like that, but the place that's like, this is where I'm from. I don't feel like I have that. I feel more like a tumbleweed that's just blown around. And so I spent most of my life traveling because it's like, well, one place is as good as another to me. It doesn't matter. I don't have a home, So it's similar. It's not the same, but it's a similar kind of thing.
And also, like, I guess it's important to recognize that the reason our parents felt it was necessary to leave their home countries and the situations were so bad, the situations were not bad in isolation of everything else.
Yeah.
That we live in a closed system, and that, for example, U.S.-Iran relations have a great deal to do with why Iran is the way it is.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm sure, in your case also. So it comes back to relationships.
It does come back. And that's another, jumps back to the thing of like, why should we, how can we take care of the rest of the world? Well, part of the reason the rest of the world is in the state it's in is because of our choices and what we have done and continue to do.
Right.
So it's not just because the U.S. is on its own, continent, kind of, doesn't mean that it's not reaching out its little tendrils or whatever and messing with people everywhere in all sorts of ways. We may not practice colonialism with guns and so much anymore. And now it's dollars and entertainment, but it's still ongoing, and it is still intentional. It's not accidental stuff. It's happening on purpose.
Definitely.
So yeah.
So I wonder, this sense of not belonging and not having a home, it's kind of this sense of not having anything to lose.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to, so that's, in contrast to people perhaps who feel that they have a lot to lose and they don't want to share it because they've had it, right? But once you feel like, well, I don't have the most foundational thing that everybody else has, so what do I care? I'll go anywhere. Sometimes I really struggle with this sense as if I'm just a leaf on the wind, and I can't seem to get a grip on anything. It's really easy for me to let things go. It's not so easy for me to ask for things.
Really?
Or to feel entitled to anything. And that can be dangerous. I mean, I found that it can be dangerous in my relationships with people.
In the way people treat you, you don't feel like you can say, wait a minute, you can't treat me like that. You can't talk to me.
I've had to work on that a lot.
I have too, oddly enough. Is that an immigrant thing, or is that just
so.
I always thought it was just like not low maybe sort of low self-esteem. I don't know.
But don't you think that means? So yeah, me too. But I think if you've always felt othered and the other is inferior, then you internalize the sense that you don't really deserve people's time or resources, or that you have to work harder to be considered legitimate.
Yeah.
And, God forbid you ask for something. So I think there's this deep psychology of
that's interesting.
Of otherhood that it actually affects my personal relationships with, whether my friends are people of color or not. I mean, it's very different kind of a dynamic.
Oh, between those different groups?
Yeah, between my friends that are,
really?
People of color or not. And it can be really hurtful because I sometimes find that with my friends who are white, whiteness, that I feel used.
Really? And do you think that they are using you, or you feel this way?
It's an agreement. It's this agreement of, yes, you are allowed to take more, and I should give more. And it's something that I've, noticed for many years, and just slowly starting to challenge it more and more because it becomes internalized and you just behave a certain way.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know that I have noticed that myself. I mean, I make myself available for use, I guess I could say, to people all the time, but I haven't noticed it being any more or less one group or another. And that could be I just haven't been paying that much attention. but I've probably been used as consistently by people of color as not, just because
Yeah.
I'm there and I'm willing. I think with
Right.
some people, there's a sort of a built-in reciprocity,
Right.
That is how they do things. So they don't mind using you because they assume that you will in turn use them for something, whether you do
Or
or
they
not.
will offer, perhaps.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then other people, it's like they just take what they can get.
Yeah.
Like, oh, really? You'll give me that too?
Yeah.
And those shoes? And
Yeah.
that reason? Oh, well, great. This is great. They're just like, hey, whatever I can get, you seem happy with it, and I'm happy, so we're happy.
All right.
So both will use you, but for different reasons.
Right. And I guess if you really feel happy with them taking your shoes and stuff, then it's fine. But if you turn around and you're like, wait, something about that wasn't right.
Yeah.
Then, so in Iran we have a tradition called tarof, which is like, it's this like really outrageous practice of conceding over and over again, but with the understanding that the other person will also concede. So you might stand at a doorway and insist that the other person goes for like 15 minutes.
Yeah. Right.
God forbid that.
I've heard of this before.
Right.
What's it called?
Tarof.
Taro?
Tarof.
I almost thought it had a different name, but yeah, I've heard of that.
Maybe. Yeah. And so there's this joke that like my aunts and uncles used to make, that once they came to the West, whether it was Canada or the US, that they would do it, and it would be like, it would be 1 a.m. They'd just come home from a party with their American friend, and they say, well, why don't you come inside? It's just like a thing you do. Of course you should come inside now, even though it's 1 a.m. Have some soup, whatever.
Right.
And the person's supposed to say, no, thank you.
That's great.
But they're like, yeah, okay. And there they are in your house, and you're like,
I'm really tired.
or they say, oh, I really like your sweater. And you're like, here, take it. And with the understanding that they will, of course, say no. But then they take it before you know it.
That's interesting, because my ex's people, if you have to be really careful if you say you like something, because they will give it to you.
Yeah, right.
Only they won't. There is no expectation of you saying no. They will not. That's like an insult.
They've given it to you, right?
It's like, oh, you like this shirt? Well, here.
It's yours now. Okay.
And if you're like, no, that's okay, they're like,
what? You
no,
said you liked
I am
it.
giving you this shirt.
Right.
You have to take it. Now there is an expectation that at some point you would do the same for them, but it's an interesting thing. I mean, many people have stumbled over that by just going, oh, those are pretty earrings. It's like, oh, here. It's like, no, wait, I really didn't want them. I'm complimenting. It's just a very strange way. So it's very similar. That's interesting how indigenous peoples all over the world have sort of real similar customs. They do them in different ways, but they're really similar.
Yeah. So
Well, Persians are indigenous to that land, right? I mean, they're basically.
It's kind of a mutt of a country. Like everybody kind of came and
But yeah,
through.
but there's a sort of a foundation of indigeneity. Like it's been there since the beginning, and then over time, lots of big things.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Cause
Social
I have a friend,
cohesion.
a native friend from Canada, First Nations woman who went to New Zealand, and she said the indigenous people there, she said it was like coming home. It was exactly like just going back to her reservation. They're the same. They have the same kind of methods. Interesting. I wonder what it means.
Yeah, and then also it's like, I'm sure they're different in a lot of ways, but there's something about it that was like home. And that's probably the important part. Yeah.
So maybe you're just in the wrong spot. Maybe you need to get into an indigenous community and you'll feel more at home, because they're more of like the fundamental stuff that kind of seems just naturally right to you will. Because I know when I go with her up to a reservation, I feel far more at home than I do here.
Yeah.
I think of it as home.
Right. Well, but the fact that indigenous spaces and cultures and practices are disappearing is something that we can't just say, oh, well, I'll just go to this place. Because when you really look at it, it's not like we just have different spaces. I mean, they're under attack constantly.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's another constant dilemma of existence, which is let's say you choose a place that feels more like home,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that it's under attack. How do you negotiate that? This is what's true for me. This is what my heart says. But this is where society is and where everything's going, and it's going to devour that.
Yeah.
Or it's going to try. It's always going to try to devour it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Down with the man or whoever who's doing all this terrible stuff.
Where are you?
Let's
come out.
Take them down. Yeah. Oh
Right.
man, now you're depressing me.
Sorry, I'm a very depressing person.
No, you're not. I'm inspired really actually by talking to you because I think a lot of these things, but I don't see those thoughts mirrored in other people all the time. So it's like it's really fulfilling. What's the word? Rewarding to hear some of my own thoughts just coming back at me,
Right.
without having to put them out first and having you go, oh yeah, that's what I think too. So that's not the same thing. you want to hear somebody else say it first. So it's like, oh, you really do think that
I
came
didn't
from
put
you.
it in your head.
That's kind of cool.
I'm glad.
So yeah, but it is depressing at the same time because it is depressing.
Yeah. It's depressing. It makes you feel frustrated and sad. I get sad.
Mm-hmm. So where do you see yourself ending up someday? Or do you? Do you have like, when I grow up, whatever, I want to be blah, blah, blah.
No, I have no idea. Today I felt so lost. Sometimes I feel extremely lost because I find meaning in place and in people and in solid situations, and that always, especially being in school, I mean, that just, there is no such thing as a solid situation in school.
Not at all.
So I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, I just want a place for my parents and for me and my sister that we can just put some roots down and know that they are okay, you know?
Yeah.
That's really what I care about.
But I wonder where they would be okay.
Yeah, well, we're Canadian citizens, so that is always kind of a potential. And I don't live just for myself. It's like part of the reason I'm in graduate school is to secure some sort of life that can feed back for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would love to move back to Vancouver, but they are all the way in the DC area now, so it's just such a long trek. I don't know if they're willing to. And they're a lot older. My parents are older than most people's parents.
Not older than mine, I'll bet.
Really not. Yeah, my dad's in his 70s, in his early 70s. And
a lot older than that.
okay.
Because I'm older than that. So somewhere. But you see yourself staying around your family? See, I got away from mine as
really?
soon as I could. I left
really?
when I was like 14, 15.
And you didn't, where are they right now?
Well, they're here in town.
Okay.
I came here
Okay, so
to sort of see if there was any way to reconcile anything.